The Rise of the Sith Omnibus has been released. Actually, it came out back in February, but better late than never, right? Since we're getting at least 4 of these gigantic hardcover omnibuses in this year alone, it seems Marvel has gone all in re-releasing Star Wars comics in this format. Among fans, hardcover books seem to be the preferred design over paperback, so I imagine that crowd must be pretty happy about this. The last hardcover omnibus I reviewed was The Old Republic Volume 1, and The Rise of the Sith Omnibus has many things in common with it. So what is The Rise of the Sith? Well, the inner dust jacket provides a fairly decent summary of what this book contains. It's a collection of all the stories that take place before and leading up to the Phantom Menace. And as you can see from the book size, there are quite a lot. But before we get into it, let's look at the cover. Obviously from this time period, we're going to have a lot of stories featuring Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, so it makes sense to display them on the front, in as best as I can describe it, a 90s American manga sort of look. On the back cover, we got lots of tiny little comic art of all the stories that'll appear inside. If this omnibus has anything over the Old Republic one, variety would be one of them. And when you take the dust jacket off, you get another fan favorite character who appears in a lot of this book. It's a splash page of good old Darth Maul taking on a whole bunch of Black Sun bodyguards. It's Jan Dursima's art, so of course it looks awesome. And if we open it up to the table of contents, wow, that is a lot of stories. Since there are so many, I won't go into too much detail for each one. And we're starting with Jedi the Dark Side, which takes place a few years before Obi-Wan becomes Qui-Gon's apprentice. But publishing-wise, it's the newest story in this whole book, meaning for the most part, Rise of the Sith is collected in chronological order. It's a shame that this series didn't get more issues after its first arc. I'd like some more stories about Qui-Gon before he met Obi-Wan. Speaking of which, the next 2 story arcs are Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, The Orient Express, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, Last Stand on Ord Mantell. Both of these stories are about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan adventuring together. Pretty solid tales of Jedi going on missions and doing their thing. Up next is Jedi Council Acts of War, where an alien species called the Anchori go up against the Jedi Order. Ever watch Episode 1 and wonder who all those Jedi were? Well, this story gives each of them a chance to shine. Notably, since this comic came out before Episode 2, the Jedi Masters all have a rainbow assortment of lightsaber colors. And speaking of the Council, the next series is the first story arc of the 1998 Star Wars comic run, better known as its rebranding after issue 45, Star Wars Republic. Issues 0 through 6 basically cover the origin and background of Ki-Adi-Mundi, arguably the 3rd most well-known council member after Mace Windu and Yoda. The next arc is the Darth Maul mini-series, where he strikes at the heart of Black Sun and just slaughters everyone. If you loved how badass Maul was in Episode 1, then you'll love this series. Then we're finally at the place that this whole omnibus was built around. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And it's alright. I mean, you've seen the movie. You know what happens. What you may not know about are all the little side stories that take place during Episode 1. They're all collected right after the main story. And then after all the Episode 1 adventures, there is a collection of comics from Star Wars Tales. Just some miscellaneous adventures that take place around Phantom Menace, around 33 BBY. This omnibus even includes the disclaimer that was in the first issues of Star Wars Tales, that some of these stories may or may not fit into the Legends continuity, a fact that is sadly ignored by certain disingenuous people on the internet that use the sillier Star Wars Tales stories to trash on the EU as a whole. In fact, after the fairly normal Star Wars Tales stories, we come to the final part of the book. The Rise of the Sith Omnibus actually includes the jokey parody comics from Star Wars Tales, but it isolates them in their own section at the back, saying, the following humor stories ran in Star Wars Tales 7, 9, 14, and 20. It separated these parody stories from the canon Tales stories, something that even the original Star Wars Tales comics wasn't always clear about. I'm glad that Del Rey with Visions, and now Marvel Comics, don't just dump anything non-canon like Infinities and put it all together with the EU. Even though it's called Legends now, there is still a canon tier hierarchy. And that's The Rise of the Sith Omnibus, a very well put together book and a good collection of Episode 1 era comics. I really like the hardcover format, and I like how the size of the pages are much larger than the Dark Horse Omnibus. But there is one major complaint that I still have. The one thing I can't get over is the price. It retails for $125. Do not spend that much on this. It is simply not worth the price. Get it on sale if you can. As it stands, I'd say $60 to $70 is a fair price. I got it for about $90, but even then, I still wish this book had more content. It's the same cost as the Old Republic Omnibus, which I also think is overpriced by the way, but it has 300 less pages. It could have added more comics easily, I think, especially with Star Wars Republic, but I'm guessing they're probably saving those for a future hardcover omnibus. I know page count and the cost of a book don't always correlate, and I'm sorry for harping on this so much, but if I'm spending $100 or more on a book, I'm looking for anything to justify my purchase. If not additional comics, how about more art pages, rough drafts, interviews, or anything? To be quite honest, the Rise of the Sith Epic Collections Volume 1 and 2 contain everything this omnibus does, and you can get them for way cheaper. The nice thing about the omnibus is that all those comics are in one place. In conclusion, this is still a very good collection. Lots of comics, but getting it on sale is mandatory. If your heart is set on collecting the Star Wars comics in this format, I say go for it. It looks great, I love it, and I hope you all do too. And once again, there's a link in the description if you're interested.